Today's project is going to be working on the solar panels for the van. So the van came with a 200 watt solar panel, which isn't quite enough to keep everything going overnight. Overnight, with average usage, you're going to drop about 40% of your battery, and during the day you might get about 20% back. So on average you're losing about 20% of your battery a night. So what I wanted to do was to see if there was a way to add more solar capacity. The good news is the solar controller in the van is perfectly capable of accepting a lot more solar input. The problem is the solar panel on the pop-top model, they put it right in the middle of the van, which doesn't leave a lot of room to put other solar panels. But I found a model of solar panel that was really long and thin that I can put 2 panels on either side and basically double my solar capacity. So that's what we're going to be working on today.
This is my plan for adding the solar panels to the van. This is the spec sheet for the solar panel that Airstream included with the Rangeline. It took me a while to track this down. I actually had to get this from an authorized Rangeline dealer. It's a 200 watt panel which produces 22 volts and about 8 amps. And I've actually seen it produce 200 watts if you're in very bright sunlight and angled exactly right. So it does actually produce to spec. Unfortunately, Rangeline, they mounted it in the very center, which makes it a little awkward to put additional panels. There's rooms to either side and a little bit of room to the front before you run into the air vent. Searching online, I did find a solution. I found some very long, thin panels that were about 100 watts each. Now, unfortunately, these panels have slightly different specifications. They have a max voltage of 24 volts and a max amperage of about 4.2. Now, when connecting solar panels, here's the configuration. You can either connect them in series or you can connect them in parallel. This would have been the series connection layout. So when you're connecting them in series, what happens is the voltage will add together, but the amperage is the minimum of the amperage of any of the units. Since the long thin solar panels were producing about half the amps because they have about half the surface area, what you end up with is a voltage of 70 volts, which is good, but an amperage of only 4 amps, which only gives you 297 watts. So it's more than the 200 watts, but still we're losing a lot of efficiency, mostly in the original panel, because it's losing about half its current. The other configuration you could wire it in is in parallel, where you just wire all of the positives together and all of the negatives together, and then run those into the solar controller. In that configuration, you're going to get the minimum of the voltage, but all of the current will add together. So in this case, my new panels were 24 volts, and I'm getting the minimum, which is going to be the original panel of 22.8. So I'm losing a little bit of my voltage on the new panels because they were designed to operate at a higher voltage, but I get to add together all of the current. And that comes up with a total of 392 watts, which is roughly double what I had before. So this is the configuration I decided to go with.
The project for today is going to be augmenting our solar capacity. As you can see here, Airstream supplied one 200 watt solar panel, and unfortunately they mounted it right in the middle of the pop top. But it looks like there's room to mount additional solar panels along the side here. So we're going to try and do that. So let me show you the solar panels that I got for this. This is my solution for the solar panels without having to take off and move the other ones. What I did is I got 2 long thin solar panels. They're 100 watts each, and they should fit on either side of the central solar panel. So it should roughly double the capacity when I'm done. Alright, here's the configuration that I'm going to lay out. Basically I'm going to have these new solar panels sitting beside the main central one. In order to hook them up, I'm going to run them in parallel. So what I did is I got a 3-way connector. It basically will snap in place. You can put the 3 panels in parallel, and it'll feed them into the solar controller. So let's connect it up and see if it works. Best to do that before you screw it down to the roof. Okay, here's the connectors. You can see this is just a little three-way connector. I've only got 2 of them plugged in for right now, just to test it and see if it works. And you should be able to just snap them in, and they lock in place. This connector fits perfectly for this situation. All right, we are snapped in. Let's go check the solar controller and see if it's producing power. Okay, after plugging it in, we found we did not have any voltage at all. So we pulled out the old voltmeter, did a little bit of troubleshooting, and what we found is this three-way connector that I bought off of Amazon has no continuity through it. It is completely dead. So I cannot recommend buying this brand. Probably just a one-off, but yeah, their quality control is clearly not good. So next step is to go out and get another set of three-way connectors to replace this. Okay, having replaced the three-way splitter with the one that actually conducts current, which is much more useful, I've got everything wired up the way I want it. I've got the 2 side panels here with the original panel in the center. So let's go inside and check the reading and see how much power we're producing here in the sun. Okay, here's the controller on the inside, and it looks like we're getting around 300 watts right now, which is not bad. Most I'd ever seen sitting in my yard like this was about 160 before that. So it looks like I've successfully almost doubled my solar power, which was what I was looking for. So looks like everything's working appropriately, and now I just need to firmly attach the panels so they don't come off. All right, to attach the solar panels firmly, I have this permanent 3M double-sided stick tape, which I'm going to put down. Then I'm going to put a little blob of butyl to cover the hole, bolt the panel down, put another blob of butyl on top, and that will hopefully keep everything nice and watertight. I think we're all prepped now to go ahead and seat the solar panel. Got a blob of butyl on each of the screw holes, ready to remove the tape and place the solar panel down. This is where you don't want to mess it up. Well, there we have the first panel installed. It's tacked down with tape and with bolts, and I've got butyl covering all of the bolts so that it should be nice and watertight. Here is the final completed project. It looks pretty good, I think. Everything is symmetrical. I've put in some zip ties to tie down all of the wires, and everything's securely attached. And I've seen it produce up to 320 watts so far. You know, theoretical maximum is now 400 in optimal conditions, so that should pretty much double the capacity. I'll call that a successful project. A small wrinkle has occurred in my project, and I mean that literally, not figuratively. Overnight, everything cooled down. I was putting the solar panels on yesterday in the bright sun, and what I'm seeing is the panel has wrinkled and buckled in several locations. The corners I'm not terribly concerned about, but the worst part is this spot in the middle. What I think might have been happening here is because when I put it on in the bright sunlight, the entire roof had heat expanded, and as it cooled, it's pushed everything together and caused the panels to wrinkle and buckle. So these panels apparently have quite a bit of differential heat expansion compared to the roof of the pop top. Not sure what I'm going to do with this. I mean, it's not fatal to have a small wrinkle in that, but moving it, especially with the tape, is going to be relatively difficult. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this come out into the sun, see if it stretches it back out again. If it doesn't, I'm probably going to have to pull those bolts and try and work it down to get that wrinkle out. So we'll see what happens later today when the sun comes out. Well, now that we're in bright sun and the roof is nice and toasty hot again, you can see that all the wrinkles have been pulled out of the solar panel. So I'm not sure what to do here. It seems like that the roof just has significant expansion and contraction built into it, and the solar panel just doesn't have as much. If I was to do all of this again, I guess what I'd recommend is mounting the solar panel on a cloudy day where it's kind of a medium temperature. That way when it gets cold and the roof contracts, it might wrinkle a little, and as it gets warm it'll tend to stretch it out, but hopefully not too much. But I figure it's not worth drilling more holes in the roof and trying to get it in an average position right now, given that it looks pretty good when it's hot in the daylight, and that's where it's going to be spending most of its time.